What skills do you have as a Magus? Let's talk about that. Hello there everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire, here to bring you the next episode in the first edition Pathfinder Magus Guide. Today we are going to be going over the skills for the class. Normally I try to mix in a little bit of class features in to go with it, but I've been reading through and I just don't have time to get everything typed up just yet, so class features will be coming in next episode. Today is just going to be a short one taking a look at skills. But before we get into the coverage of the class skills today, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on just such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share the video far and wide. But now, let's actually start talking about your class skills. So, something to note here that we'll bring up again when we go more in depth at the actual class features, the abilities you're afforded. This class gets 1 skill point per level plus your intelligence modifier. So, if you're following this guide so far, that you should be looking at a +3 intelligence modifier for a total of 4 skill points per level. If you're a human, that goes up another 1 point for a total of 5 skill ranks per level. So that's something to bear in mind, is that this is going to be a class that is going to want to think about the skills they want to invest in early on and which ones they're going to want to avoid. Not only that, but which ones they can afford to put ranks into every other level or so, because they have a good stat to help compensate for the inconsistent skill application. So now we'll actually start talking about your specific skills, however. And to kick things off, we have climb. This is based off of your strength. You climb different obstacles. The DC is going to vary depending on how smooth, how steep an incline, or even if there's an incline that you are working with, and if you have any equipment or other means of helping you add to the skill in order to overcome the DC. So there can be a big number of factors at play, but you are going to get access to magic options yourself, or be able to use them if you invest in other skills like use magic device. So maybe you're going to want to do 1 point at most, because since this is a class skill for you, when you put that first skill rank into a skill, you get a +3 miscellaneous modifier. So even though we have a strength of 10, so a +0 modifier, putting 1 skill rank into it, you have a total of a +4 modifier to any and every climb check you make. Given that rope and grappling hooks, climbing pythons, things like that are regularly common and available gear, you shouldn't have any issue bypassing early level climb checks, and you're very rapidly going to start coming into other options as well. Going on from there, we have craft. It works off of your intelligence. Now, crafting can be super important, but in a lot of cases, especially for a class that isn't a full progression spellcaster, you cap out at 6 level spells, you may not really be super interested in having to invest all that deeply into crafting to do any enchanting, since you're not going to be able to really hit those higher level enchantments with those higher end spells. So it could be something where you are more comfortable with skipping it. But as always, remember that this is a guide. It's just a guide. None of this is set in stone. This is just to give you a starting point of thoughts, overviews, a little bit of a critical look there, although a lot of this is still going to end up being subjective at the end of the day. So take it for what you will, and then build the character that you want. Now, trying to go on faster through this because I could probably ramble a little too much and already am. Next, we have the fly skill, which is going to work off of your dexterity score. We have a great dexterity score, and fly, at least at later levels, definitely gets to be much, much more important. Your early levels, if you can afford to put any skill ranks into it, then sure, drop the occasional one in, but it's not something you're going to be making rapid use of right off the bat. But once you gain access to the fly spell, or magic items that afford you the ability to fly, then this is going to become very important. Next, we have the Intimidate skill, which works off of your Charisma score, which is our potential dump stat. Intimidate allows you to, well, intimidate a target. This allows you to have a stronger interaction in social encounters. This can pair well with debuffs. Certain spells and effects work great if a target is already demoralized to some degree. They're starting to hit those initial stages of psychological debuffs. So that can... Intimidate can pair very well in those instances, but it's not something I would count on all the time, nor would I consider it an essential investment with this build that we're going for. Unlike, however, the next set of skills, first of which is Knowledge Arcana. Working from intelligence, this allows you to identify magic beasts, dragons, constructs, ancient mysteries, arcane symbols, all kinds of incredible things that are going to be beyond the grasp of people without this skill. This is absolutely essential for you. Then we have Knowledge Dungeoneering. Also, you guessed it, working off of intelligence. You identify aberrations, oozes. This is also used for caverns and spelunking. Any skill checks specifically related to that wouldn't be covered by, say, climb, as an example. This is another one that can be really great, though if your DM is willing to give you any kind of indication and they say, or hint that aberrations and oozes or just caves in general aren't going to be a regular thing, super important, then you can decrease this one in value. Same goes for any of the other knowledge skills, but assuming all things equal, you don't know exactly what kind of setting you're into or you're heading into, any one of these skills can be important. All three of them could be important. So check with your DM and see what they're willing to kind of give you a little bit of a heads up about that won't completely spoil the game. Then we have Knowledge Planes, also working from your intelligence. Knowing all the planes, their magics, the effects that exist within those planes, and outsiders that dwell on those planes that can be more commonly found there. Knowledge Planes is going to be very, very useful. Early game, it's probably going to be more if you encounter the occasional low level, like 1 to 3 hit dice outsider creature, but mid to late game, it definitely ramps up in importance. So out of the knowledge skills available here, if I were to pick one that you could be more comfortable with skipping at least like the first 2 levels in, it's probably Knowledge Planes. But after that, you're going to want to see regular investment unless your DM has made it clear that it's not going to be incredibly relevant to your game. Now, we go on from there to the Profession skill, working off of your wisdom stat, so no penalty, no real bonus. This is for making money outside of adventuring. You skip it. This is that filler skill for everything that might be accompanying a proper crafting skill. Say you took armor smithing or weapon smithing. There's different particular things that have to be taken into account for each of those, but generally the skill is going to cover heat metal thing, hit metal thing with hammer on anvil till the desired shape is found, then repeat the process. Profession, though, covers everything in between, like some of the basic day-to-day maintenance that a shop has to undergo. Heck, even going up into 6th or 7th level I could see, but by then you should have pretty consistent access to magic that will let you have all kinds of other bonuses or means of travel, so your mileage may vary. Lastly, though, we have spellcraft. This is good for identifying spells and researching items. This works from intelligence, easy investment. This is one that should be maxed pretty regularly, I would say, because this isn't just identifying spells on scrolls. This is potentially identifying what spells are currently being cast, recognizing the flows of magic, the schools of magic, the gesticulations, the particular hand signs they make as they channel the magic to do the thing. So definitely a very important skill. I know I said lastly there a moment ago, but that was last on that particular slide. We have 2 skills left to cover here, silly me. Next is swim. Working off of your strength, this lets you make swim checks in various liquids. How painful those liquids might be may vary and could affect the DC, but in that instance, well, that's particular to the campaign and whatever mess you have gotten yourself in. At most, in most campaigns, this is going to be 1 point to invest for that +1, then the +3 miscellaneous for a solid +4 that should see you through a lot of the rolls you might have to make. The exception to this, however, is if you're going for an aquatic campaign. You're in the Navy, son, you're a fearsome pirate. Whatever the case may be, you're out on the water, you're adventuring on the open ocean. Then swim becomes very important. Moving on, we have use magic device. The unfortunate thing with such an essential skill is that it works off of your charisma score, which is potentially a dump stat. Though we do have it set at a -10, this is the stat that for this guide is acceptable for our character to take a penalty in. And even at just a -2 penalty, that's a pretty safe penalty to take. What this lets you do, though, is you can trick magic items into activating for you, even if you don't normally meet the requirements. So this goes for druid items, druid wands, staves, scrolls. This would go for clerics, anything that's not really an arcane spellcaster, but just bear in mind, there might be other factors at play. There's lots of... Sorry, I'm getting into DM mode here, considering the possibilities with this. Anyways, point is, this skill lets you trick a magic item into activating as if you had the appropriate requirements for using the item. The more advanced the item, the higher the DC, although your DM can change the circumstances as warranted, but this is massively useful, and this skill alone is so good it makes it well worth taking the trait that lets you use this use magic device skill with your intelligence score rather than charisma. So definitely a lot to consider there, and you can see just with me expounding a little bit more than I usually do on each of the skills, what with making a somewhat shorter video, you can have a little bit of play in different areas. You do have to sell things to your DM for maybe using certain skills in unusual fashions, but there is a certain amount of wiggle room that can go into these. And not only that, but it's a good idea to speak with your DM to find out ahead of time, okay, what skills are going to be generally more important. For example, the perception skill. It's the most rolled skill in the game. It'll be rolled in any campaign. Doesn't really matter what it is. It'll be rolled in any game. So even though it's not a class skill for the Magus, just even having it as a non-class skill can be incredibly valuable, even though you're just getting the +1 plus your wisdom modifier, which in our case is 0, but even still, having that extra set of eyes can sometimes yield successful results. So play around with things. Each skill can vary a little bit in its importance, and given the limited number of skill points you're going to have over the course of your adventuring career, you're going to want to have as best an idea of where you want to invest things to, well, make the best use of your skill points and be a character that is going to survive and meet whatever challenge is thrown their way. Though, as always, this is just a guide. It's not meant to be set in stone. You don't have to follow this exactly. This is just to give you an idea of an example of how to get things to work together, to mesh together really nicely, to take advantage of strengths and weaknesses. For example, spending a trait to make a skill that is pretty useful on any spellcasting class, to have it work off of a primary stat rather than a potential dump stat. But with all that said, before I get myself lost in whatever little loops of logic I have while my brain is trying to shut down on me for sleep, thank you all so very much for your time joining me here today. It's just, these years have been so much fun. Thank you all for making this odd little journey with my strange little mind, talking about, well, what's apparently a shared interest for us all. Anyways, remember to subscribe, hit the like button down below, leave your thoughts and comments, or in the comment section down below, I suppose. Remember to subscribe, and thank you all just so very much for your time. You all have yourselves a good night.